All right, good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we want to be live on Facebook as well. So we're going to bring in a couple extra groups here. Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook, which just crashed 16,000 strong, and we'll stream to the Falcons. We're going to talk some Falcons today as well, along with a lot of key games around the NFL. It's going to be a heck of a schedule this weekend. Starting last night, actually had some playoff implications. Welcome in, everybody. This is Coast to Coast Football. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host. I'm in Atlanta. This guy over here, he's Nick Kendall. He's in Seattle. That's why we are Coast to Coast with your football coverage. Nick, I know you wanted to talk some NFL draft, and we always like talking some NFL draft, but for one of the first times in a long time, dude, I am intrigued with all of this NFL playoff race and trying to predict who gets in. The top seeds are pretty much still up for grabs. And this is a pivotal weekend coming up. There's some really good, important games all across the board in every division. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Had a daycare tour last night. Man, Scott, I'm going to be broke beyond my wildest dreams with the childcare stuff coming up here. But no, doing pretty well. Excited that Friday's here. Excited that we'd stop raining for a second, which is great. We have another atmospheric river just coming down the tracks here Sunday, but we're gonna get through. We do every Seattle winter, so it's okay.
Yeah, you're not just getting Seattle mist; you're actually getting some rain.
Yeah, no, we had the rainiest December 6th in Seattle history. Luckily, when we do get those huge rain events here in the winter, it's warm too. It's all this water coming from Hawaii. That's why they call it a Pineapple Express. So it's at least it's warmer and we're not shivering too, but man, it streets flood. It's wild.
All right. Well, we've got some wild stuff going on this weekend. And let's hit on last night. We might as well get started with the playoff talk and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because the Pittsburgh Steelers look like they were ready to take a stranglehold on a spot in the playoffs. They're sitting at 7-4. They got the Cardinals coming up. Yep. They've got the Patriots coming up at home. They lose them both. They're 7-6. I'm out on the Steelers now. I don't think they're even going to make the playoffs at this point. Now, Mike Tomlin was very defiant, and what gives you the confidence? One of the reporters asked him, "What gives you the confidence that you can get back and turn this thing around?" He says, "That's what we do. That's who we are." I'm like, well, if anybody's going to say it, I don't believe it. Is it might be Mike Tomlin, but I'm ready to stick a fork in them and start opening up another playoff spot, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, 2 losses to 2 of the worst 5 teams in the NFL. 3. Yes, I was just being like, you never know. Sometimes
I know. I'm teasing.
Little air bar, but tell me the top 3 picks, right? The Cardinals are still sitting there at 3, and the Patriots are still sitting there at 2. So yeah, the Steelers look like they're kind of falling apart here. Only putting up 18, and that's something too. I mean, this is why the NFL is the best, right? Any given Sunday, the parity is crazy. Like if this was Alabama versus Southwest, Children of the Blind State, A&M, then, there's no way in hell that game, the Alabama ever loses. But in the NFL,
condensed all of college football talent into 32 teams,
yeah,
you might have more competitive matchups.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Wouldn't be the best, but I agree. So yeah, this is why the NFL is the best. This is one reason. Also, I see all Broncos fans talking about the schedule down the stretch. I'm like, oh, no way we go less than 3-2. We'll probably go 4-1. There are no damn guarantees in the NFL. You got to take it one at a time. I mean, I know it's cliche, but you could easily go 1-4 down the stretch because it's the NFL. It's tough. So Steelers falling out now. I'll believe they're dead when they are dead, but with the offensive stuff going on, don't believe the quarterbacks. There's still malcontent in that offensive room. So, yeah, they definitely seem like a team that is plummeting fast.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything with the way Mitch Trubisky played last night in the first half. It's hard to win games against anybody. And then Bailey Zappi had a nice game, couple really nice throws to Hunter Henry. Got shut out in the second half, but so be it. You build a 21-3 lead and hang on. That defense had just given up just 6 points to the Chargers. That defense for the Patriots are good. You get a 21-3 hold, you could be in trouble even against the Patriots. We go live on these channels every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you know what I did? I screwed this up. I am streaming to the wrong channel. Let me fix this. I want to remove this from Twitter real quick. And I want to bring in our Atlanta Falcons page, because that is a page that I think will have more fun discussing discussing the playoffs. So apologies. I was streaming to the wrong channel. I was streaming to my Falcons Twitter page instead of my Falcons Facebook page. And I want to bring in some Falcons fans because we are going to talk the NFC South. That is one of the pivotal games. The Bucs and Falcons is for first place in the NFC South. And if the Bucs win, the first place team would be 6-7. So I apologize to y'all. And if you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment and I'll catch back up. But we're talking Steelers. Now, the Steelers aren't out of it by any stretch of the imagination. They're still 7-6. And if you run through the playoff scenarios, which I did this morning, and you pick winners and losers, the Jaguars are at the Browns. If the Jaguars win that game, the Steelers are still in a playoff spot. They'd be in the 7th seed at 7-6 against the Baltimore Ravens, assuming everything else happened the way I had it. But I had most of the favorites winning in those games. So the Steelers aren't out of it, but my God, you lose those 2 games against those 2 teams at home. It certainly isn't going to get any easier. You're going to have to get right in a hurry down the stretch on the final 4 games when you have to go at Colts, Bengals, at Seahawks, at Ravens. I think there's a spot opening up in the AFC playoff spot. I think the Steelers are going to lose theirs.
Yeah, that's definitely got to be one of the toughest strength of schedules down the stretch as well. And losing 2 gimmies, I mean, if anybody can pull him and right the ship, it is Mike Tomlin. But they got to have no confidence right now after losing to the Cardinals and the Patriots. Maybe an overlooking factor, but I can't imagine that with a team that's that much in the playoff race with the Steelers and what they've done historically. I mean, not like back in the 70s, but even in like the last 5 years. I mean, this is a team that knows what it takes to win. So. They might be out. We'll see. Still 4 more games. They are sitting there at, what is it, 7-6? So it's not over.
They're still in a spot, but my God, they should be. If they are a playoff team, they should be 9-4 and cruising. Yeah, and really putting heat on the Baltimore Ravens. Instead, they're looking over their shoulders because you know who else is there? The whole AFC North is up for grabs. You know who else is there? The Cincinnati Bengals are there now. And the Browns aren't going away. If Flacco can steady that team at quarterback, they've got the defense. They've got a playoff defense. As I was saying a moment ago, before I realized I screwed up, we go live on these channels every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday because we enjoy the interaction with the fans, including guys like Greg Elrod, who came in nice and early. He says, "Morning, my favorite way to start a Friday." Well, we're glad you're here, man. Certainly appreciate it. Again, sometimes I think about these shows. It's like, do people really want to talk rest of the NFL? And as I started looking at this, I'm like, I want to talk NFL. Okay, so if I want to talk NFL and we're excited about NFL, then we got a show. We got a show with y'all and guys like John Harrell coming in. Appreciate you on YouTube. Ryan Adonis. He says, "Let's go Falcons." He's not sold on the Steelers right now, and the Steelers fans are out on Mike Tomlin. He's trending on my page on Twitter. They tailor that to the individual. So you might not have seen that, but I did. I clicked on Tomlin, and the Steelers fans are done. I understand. I do. With their history and their lack of success in the last decade, I mean, Steelers don't go 10 years without a Super Bowl. That just is not like them. I get it. I understand. He'd have a job in the NFC South in 5 minutes. And the Steelers fans are like, we understand that too, and that's okay. We need a change. I'm like, okay. I seriously, I get it from both angles. Tomlin would be a hot commodity, but he may have run his race in Pittsburgh already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's possible if he is available. You want to talk about first-round draft picks for a coach. I mean, somebody would be tripping over themselves to get a chance at Mike Tomlin. But, yeah, their schedule is extremely tough down the stretch. I don't know if this is including last night's New England game, but as far as rankings go, they have I saw them in here somewhere. Come on, this is great live radio. 17th hardest strength of schedule left. So that must be including the New England game. Still, they'll turn the page when the whole week is over for all the NFL teams. But dropping those 2, it would be a hell of a coaching job and a turnaround and internal fortitude if they were able to make the playoffs with the schedule they have left after dropping the 2 they just did.
I agree. Harry Marshall Wood said, "I had to hunt y'all down on Friday. Not used to watching on Fridays." Well, we're here. We're here on Fridays, at least through draft, and then we'll see how the summer goes. But For me, football season goes to about May 1st and then kicks back up about August 1st. So that's 10 months. We'll be doing the show on Fridays for sure.
Yeah.
So it's good to have you in here. Let me see. Jordan Brown found us. He goes, good morning, guys. Just subscribed on Scott's YouTube channel. Couldn't find the All Falcons page, though. Okay, well, I certainly appreciate that. There isn't one on YouTube. There is one on Facebook. It's just All Falcons ATL on Facebook to find it. There's about 16,000 on that page. And then my Scott Kennedy Facebook page is growing well. I post all kinds of NFL stuff on there. This morning, the 3 videos I have on there, scheduled one for 8, was Bill Belichick, then Mike Tomlin, and then Bailey Zappi. And I'll probably go LeBron James because they had a big game last night too. So it's an all sports page, lots of video, lots of clips. So appreciate y'all coming in wherever you can. Bucs Rays Bolts is here. Hey, Scotty, good to see you. Our Tampa guy coming in. He's been joining us on in our Falcons chats and has been a welcome guest as well. Brad Clark. Good day, everyone. Rise up. Let me see here. Before we get into those questions, I see some of them. I want to come in like, who do you think is going to win this game, et cetera, et cetera. I want to say hello to some folks. Morning, gentlemen. I got concerns of the depth of our defense this week. I'm assuming you mean Atlanta Falcons. On Fridays, it's a little tougher because we're talking everybody, especially when I got Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts on the pictures today.
No, he is Falcons. He joined us on Wednesday, so good to see you. Another PR.
And then Lawrence Rivera, echoing my statement on Tomlin that he wouldn't be out of work long. And like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not time to move on. Mm-hmm. You can. Your message stops getting across. You lose some of your support within the organization. It could be time for a fresh start. That works for coaches too. I get it. I get it. If the Pittsburgh Steelers fans are ready to move on, I understand. And I would be lining up to try and hire Mike Tomlin too. So again, who do you want in exchange? That's, who can you replace him with that's better? That becomes the next question. And we've got a video on here that was a couple weeks back that we did on the YouTube channel about the top candidates. Bobby Slowick is one of those guys. Houston Texans, another playoff type of atmosphere that we're talking about there. Ryan Adonis, I appreciate you coming in with the super chat, my friend. Always very active in the chats and on the YouTube channel and part of the community. He says, Falcons coming to play this Sunday. Thank you guys for having the best show every week. Go Bijan. Well, certainly. We appreciate it, Ryan. Mixing and matching between all the different stuff we do. We really enjoy what we do. So hopefully it shows and you enjoy it. So let's move on from the Steelers. We've gotten there. And, as we start moving down the calendar, one of the first games up that will be coming up is Buccaneers Falcons. That is for the NFC South lead. If the Bucs win, they move to 6-7. The Falcons would drop to 6-7. The Buccaneers would have a better conference record at 5-4 versus 4-5, so they would win that tiebreaker. I feel like for the good of the game, for goodness sakes, no offense to Bucs fans, I don't want a losing team going to the playoffs. I just don't. You need somebody, and as a neutral, yes, I know I live in Atlanta. I grew up an Atlanta fan. I would be saying it different if I was rooting for the Atlanta Falcons in this situation. But I want someone to take charge of the NFC South. If the Falcons were sitting there at 5-7, not really looking at the playoffs, it wouldn't really change how I feel about this. I want someone to take charge of the NFC South and not just backdoor their way into the playoffs to be playoff fodder for one of the teams in the NFC East.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's probably still a likelihood, considering that whoever wins the NFC South is going to go up against Cowboys/Eagles. But you never know. That's why you play the game, right? This isn't the NCAA playoff committee where we're just basing things on hypotheticals. We get to see what the results are. So anything can happen there. I think the Atlanta Falcons will take care of business in this game at the end of the day. I think that with Atlanta's 4-2 at home, Buccaneers are 2-4 on the road. And Baker Mayfield's a limited quarterback. Atlanta's playing good defense right now. He'll keep it close. He'll keep it in control. And as long as Desmond Ridder continues what he did last week and just protect the gosh darn football, you got a chance against this team. And I think he probably has had this game circled, also considering the missed opportunities he had the first time they played the Buccaneers. Not again, not this time. I think Atlanta's going to take care of business.
I think so too. I think I picked the Falcons by double digits in this game. I just like the matchup.
Yeah.
The Falcons want to be a smash mouth type of team, and that watching the Panthers and Chuba Hubbard just chew up the middle of the Buccaneers defense without Vita Vea in there. I just don't like the matchup for the Buccaneers because, okay, Baker Mayfield can get him some yards, but he's also going to put the ball in harm's way. You don't want to put the ball in harm's way with Jesse Bates out there patrolling. It's a different Falcons defense. They don't put a ton of pressure on the quarterback. The Buccaneers do. The Buccaneers have been getting some pressure on the quarterback, which is doesn't always bode well for Desmond Ridder. But I just like the matchup in this case with the style of play that the Atlanta Falcons will have success running right at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then hit their shots, and their defense is good enough to put the kibosh on Baker Mayfield. Edward Brown comes in here with a great point in a super chat, which is also nice, but he also says, I see the Mike Tomlin situation the same way Andy Reid's situation. Good coach, but sometimes a change of scenery can recharge you. And it has been good for the Philadelphia Eagles too. So it was one of those win-win situations. I think this is an excellent point to be made that Andy Reid wasn't going to be out of work for very long.
No.
And both teams may have benefited. Andy Reid may have started losing the locker room a little bit. His voice not being heard, a change of scenery for everybody, a fresh start could benefit everybody. So I'm okay with that. The Kansas City Chiefs have certainly benefited from Andy Reid, and you can't say the Philadelphia Eagles went backwards. That's for sure. So it was good for both of them.
Yeah, I'm curious what would happen with Mike Tomlin if he were available. I think he'd probably get a first and third round pick for him, especially considering what appears like the Broncos setting kind of not a total precedent, but first time in a decade I think we've had a coach traded. So would be interesting to see what happens. I hope it would be to the NFC, and man, if he were available, that would really change the dynamic of the coaching market this offseason. What
is his history with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because I heard someone say, and Bucs Rays Bolts, you might be able to tell me. Someone said, I'd love to bring him back home to Tampa, and I didn't know what that necessarily meant if he were available. So I think there's some history there. There could be. I'd set the over/under at 3 coaching changes. We're already at 1 in the NFC South. I think probably Arthur Smith, if he wins the division and goes 9-8 or better, he'll be back. But Tampa could be looking for another coach. New Orleans could be looking for another coach. And we already know Carolina is. So Mike Tomlin back in Tampa might make sense.
He was the defensive backs coach in Tampa from 2001 to 2005. And he must have been given that timeline underneath Tony Dungy. That makes a lot of sense as well. So timeline wise, so there you go. He coached under Tony Dungy. So shout out
5
Tony
seasons
Dungy.
in Tampa, and they had some pretty good seasons there too. So I get that. That would Atlanta Falcons fans probably wouldn't want to see Mike Tomlin in Tampa.
No,
the NFC South would, but it would be good for the NFC South. That would might be a good move for both of them. And Edward, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Want to move down the schedule just a little bit here. We talked Buccaneers, Falcons. You got Lions, Bears. That one's pretty straightforward. But another one coming up at 1 o'clock.
Is it though, Scott? I mean, the Lions are really good, but this Bears offensive running game has been awesome.
We're not talking wins, losses. I'm talking playoffs here.
Okay, just pure playoffs.
Yeah,
okay, that's fine.
I'm talking just playoffs. The Bears can beat the Lions.
Yes.
This one's for straightforward. I mean, the Bears are not going to make the playoffs. The Lions almost certainly will.
Yes.
So this is playoff race discussion, not necessarily wins and losses.
Week 14. For sure. I think the Bears will be interesting just because their offensive line is starting to come together there, and their run defense has been great too. So they're going to make Jared Goff beat them.
Detroit has been struggling mightily on defense, and it could be a good showcase game for Justin Fields.
And quietly over the last 8 weeks, the Bears' run defense has turned into an absolute monster. Their success rate and EPA per rush on the defensive side of the ball is significantly better than anybody else in the league right now. I don't know what's happened. I haven't watched too much Bears football, but it's like you look at the graphics, you're like, what the heck is going on in Chicago? Nobody
Montez
can run
Sweat
on them.
factor, just
I
not just a
guess.
pass rusher.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable with their run defense. So did want to give them a shout out too.
Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to say that game was already decided. Just that
Yes.
the playoff fortunes for both teams have probably already been decided. It would be really hard to picture the Lions not make the playoffs, and it would be tough to see the Bears in the playoffs.
Completely fair.
The other 1:00 game in that neck of the woods, move east a little bit over to Cincinnati, and you got the Colts at Bengals. Now, when Joe Burrow went down, I was just about ready to bury the Bengals, and then they go off. And last week, they had a nice win at Jacksonville. All of a sudden, making the AFC South look a little more interesting, because all of a sudden, the Colts, on the heels of their 4-game winning streak, they're just 1 game behind the Jags now. So Colts have won 4 in a row. The Bengals had a big win in Jacksonville. Was that more of a flukish type thing, or can Jake Browning sustain the big week that he had and beat the Colts?
I think this is a total toss-up pick'em game. I would probably pick the Colts right now in this one, just the hot hand. I trust their defense a little bit more. But my biggest takeaway from the Cincinnati Bengals putting up that many points against a very good Jags defense is that Jamar Chase might be quarterback proof in the NFL. He was still unbelievable in that game. Shout out to Jake Browning for coming in there, former Washington Husky quarterback. Not a great prospect when he was coming out by any means, but looked pretty darn good taking on the Jags and a good defense. So I'll take the Colts in this one, but color me intrigued. Calling the Bengals dead when Burrow went down, but it's another Shanahan team, right? Another Shanahan scheme out there in Cincinnati, and maybe that's a plug and play quarterback stuff going on there. Maybe we've been overrating Burrow. I don't know. I'm really curious to see what the Bengals do down the stretch here, sitting there at 6-6. Not dead yet.
The Bengals are in this thing. Jake Browning, I think he comes back down to earth a little bit after a big game. We've seen that happen. The instant success, and then this is the next big thing. We saw it with Will Levis. We saw it last year with Bailey Zappi. We saw it year 1 with Mac Jones. So Jake Browning, I don't expect him to stay quite that hot. Keep waiting for it to, who's disproving that rule is Mr. Brock Purdy up in San Francisco. Keep waiting for him to come back down to earth. Maybe he's just that good. This stat may surprise you, Nick. It did surprise me. Talking about let's get pressure on a young-ish quarterback in Jake Browning, who hasn't played a whole lot. Did you know the Indianapolis Colts are 2nd in the NFL in sacks?
Wow. No, I would not.
I had no idea. I helped cover this team. I pay a lot of attention to the Colts. I watch them weekly and see, and I had no idea. The Baltimore Ravens have 47 sacks. The Indianapolis Colts are number 2 with 42. The Bills, Dolphins, and Chargers all have 41. Indianapolis Colts.
Well, they have 2 really good interior defensive linemen in Grover Stewart. I was a big fan of coming out. Broke my heart. He went 1 pick before the Broncos, I think. And also, of course, DeForest Buckner. And I think Kwity Paye has been coming on there for the Indianapolis Colts as well. Former first-round pick out of Michigan. Always really athletically gifted, but hadn't put it all together yet. But I know he's when I've tuned in and seen the Colts this year, I've seen Kwity Paye flash and make some plays as well. So coming together, I think their linebacker too, Zaire
Franklin. Sam Ebukam was one of their bigger free agent signings, and he's having a good year from the 49ers. He was backing up, Joey Bosa and not Joey Bosa. Nick is in San Francisco, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Nick Bosa and whoever was on the side, I forgot who's on the other side. Well, you can be the 3rd best edge rusher on San Francisco's team last year and still be pretty darn good.
You can never have enough pass rushers and defensive linemen. It should be in waves, and he's been good this year. I think his sack, over the last 6 games, he's like one of the top 5 sack earners in the NFL. So will be interesting. We got Matt coming in here. Good to see you, Matt. Hope you're doing well. He says, how likely it is the Giants make the 7th seed? The rest of the NFC is crumbling down to their level. And if they beat Green Bay, they win 3 in a row. I would be pretty shocked about that. I mean, give them some credit for some fortitude, but they're still sitting there at the 12 seed in 6-6. Yeah, they've been climbing out. But I don't know. I think it would be pretty hard to see them jumping the Rams. First off, beating the Rams. I'm taking the Rams this week. They've been equally hot too.
Yeah, that's the problem, Nick, is two of the teams that were lower that have also picked it up are two teams that I said last week you have to watch: the Rams and the Pack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the other teams. When you start that low, it's like, okay, not only do I win to get a certain record, I need help. These other teams that I have to climb over are doing some things well. Looking at one stat, playoffstatus.com, they've got the Giants at 2%, which is one of the bottom, if I count up 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25. Seventh from the bottom of chances. Now, it's not impossible, but no. I'm here with no way the Giants make the playoffs. I'm here with Harry on this one. I'd be really, really surprised.
Yeah, sitting there at 4-8. Excuse me, their Packers are 6-6. I was looking at their next opponent, and the Packers have one of the easiest strengths of schedule down the stretch in the entire NFL. They are second entering this week, so would be pretty darn hard to see the Giants do that. I guess credit to them and the fighting Tommy DeVitos for fighting back and playing football, and they were definitely left for dead. Still sitting there with the 7th overall pick in the draft. They'll probably finish somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. So good for them for winning some games, but I'm not buying.
Yeah, it's again 9-8 will probably give you a pretty good chance of getting into the playoffs, but they'd have to go 5-0 the rest of the way, knocking off the Packers on Monday night.
I thought that Monday night was the. I could be wrong.
There's
Sunday
two
night?
games this Monday.
Oh, heck yeah!
I didn't realize that until just now either. So there's two games this Monday: Titans, Dolphins, Packers at Giants. So I think it would be really tough. Want to see some other stuff coming in here, but right now I'm going to go to our guy John Harrell, who's coming in with a $20 super sticker. Support for the show. Thank you. It's a nice reminder from John, from Edward, from Ryan that super chats and stars on Facebook are the most direct way to support the show and the efforts that Nick and I do every week, every day, really, to try and bring more content. We have a lot of fun doing this. Can't do it without guys like you because our wives would make us stop. So we certainly appreciate, John, with the support for the show that you have coming in. A good question in here from Rusty. Rusty's been a little salty lately. He's one of those, I'm tired of watching this stuff. How can you think that this is good Falcons stuff despite the wins? And I've been leaning a little bit more towards Rusty's side. Again, just because a win does not mean everything is okay. That was kind of the point I've been trying to make this week for on the Falcons podcast. Yes, be happy with a win, be happy with the direction. That doesn't mean you're not trying to find areas to improve, because there are always areas to improve. There's areas of concern. What are you looking at going into the offseason? And he asks, going into the offseason, what needs to happen for the rest of the year to give Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder another year? A playoff win for me is the only answer, not a playoff appearance and losing by 50. Desmond Ridder is going to get another year in the organization because he's cheap, unless he's part of some big blockbuster trade where you send him along as a piecemeal, like the Broncos did with Drew Lock when they sent him to Seattle for Russell Wilson. Arthur Smith, I've got to see over the last 5 weeks, I've got to see massive improvement on offense, flat out. The defense is playing great. Special teams are great. But he's also offensive coordinator and play caller, and the offense has regressed massively. I think if they go 9-8 and get into the playoffs, he's back. Desmond Ridder isn't going anywhere. He's cheap. He's on a contract. I would have the conversation with him very seriously if I'm President Rich McKay and owner Arthur Blank. What are you going to do to make changes to this offense to get better? And you can sacrifice coordinators once and save your job. Do you give more power to Dave Ragone, or do you replace Dave Ragone? Or do you think you're just going to get better internally, which is right now something that I would be against?
Yeah, I mean, they got to do something offensively. This is an offensive-oriented head coach hire, and the Falcons are the 8th worst offense in the NFL in EPA per play, and obviously not getting it done. They're the 7th worst in success rate. Passing-wise, they are the 10th worst in rush. This is the one that's crazy to me. The 10th worst rush, EPA per play. I mean, that's supposed to be your bread and butter. You spend all these resources on the offensive line. You go out there and you get a tight end and a big wide receiver to help, obviously the pass game, but also to be an impact in the run game as blockers in the perimeter. You spend a top 10 pick on a running back, Bijan Robinson. So to be bottom 10 in rush EPA with what you have pieces wise and what you've spent, it's not acceptable. I do think I'm kind of in between both you and Rusty. I think that if you make the playoffs, you're pretty much safe. But if you make the playoffs and get absolutely embarrassed, then I think we'll have to have a conversation here because in theory, on paper, there's no way the offense should look like this. And when your head coach is also the offensive coordinators, in the very least, like you said, changes to the power structure and who's calling plays, but coaches don't like doing that, obviously. Right. And that could be enough to push them out the door. We'll see. It's going to be fascinating, but first you got to make the playoffs, and that starts this week.
Yeah, if you finish, the thing is 8-9 might make the playoffs. So and we've had this discussion before. If you're 8-9, you eke into the playoffs. What does that mean for Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder? It means there's some big questions to be had. It means they're not safe. I don't know that Arthur Smith would be gone, but his seat would be scorching. Go 8-9 and make a run, and all of a sudden everything comes together and win the Super Bowl, then you're fine. But the odds of that happening right now with what we've seen are pretty low. Okay, moving on. Another big game in the AFC: Jaguars Browns. Browns all of a sudden. You got Joe Flacco maybe being able to save the Browns. Jaguars coming off a loss to the Bengals, another AFC North team last week, which revived the Bengals' playoff hopes. The Jaguars thought they're looking safe. We're looking pretty good. All of a sudden, they're looking over their shoulder. They're looking over their shoulder a little bit. The Colts have won 4 in a row. They got a chance to win another one. They have the tiebreaker over the Colts because they're 2-0 against the Colts. But this is all of a sudden a really, really important game for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And Trevor Lawrence is hurt, but so is C.J. Beathard, their backup quarterback. I mean, could this be a Nick Foles reemergence here? I think he's the next guy on the roster there for the Jags. So I might be leaning the Browns on this one, as crazy as that sounds. I think watching Joe Flacco versus Nick Foles, you could have, given me a billion guesses on who the quarterbacks would be in a game like this down the stretch. And I never would have gotten to Joe Flacco versus Nick Foles. So crazy how many injuries we've had at quarterback this season. But I think the Browns are going to get this one right. Joe Flacco at least gives them confidence, somebody who can run the offense. He looked okay out there in a few of those throws this week, especially when they are being so predicated on the run with the Browns. So we'll see. It is going to be an interesting game, no doubt. The Browns have the most dominant unit on the field in their defense, so that's kind of what leans me to them. But Jags are not too far behind.
The home game helps. They're a 3-point favorite, so you're at home. 50 degrees and rain. What's the over-under on this one?
Oh, man. 34? 36?
32 and a half.
Wow.
32 and a half for an NFL game is really, really low. But again,
really
you're playing your 5th and 6th quarterbacks of the season in these places right now. We talk about drafting a quarterback every year. Yes, absolutely. You should have. I see why you want to keep 3 quarterbacks now. It's you want to have those guys out there. So I can absolutely see why you'd want to have 3 quarterbacks. Chris Walker, want to say hello. Good to see you in here. He says Rich McKay doing something necessary. To me, he's not been that great in Atlanta. No, he's a big part of the problem is Rich McKay. When you start looking at this steady, what's been the constant? Arthur Blank and Rich McKay. Arthur Blank has done what good owners should do, which is support the hell out of the team and pour a bunch of resources in it. No problems there, except for sometimes he's a little too loyal. And that's really hard to say, oh, he's too good a guy. But I understand on that one. So yes, that becomes a very, very interesting game. If the Jaguars win that game, it puts the Steelers back into a playoff spot for now. And let's see here. And it would make the 6th seed Houston against 3rd seed Kansas City, 5th seed Indianapolis against 4th seed Jacksonville. If Jacksonville wins that game with Miami still having the number 1 seed. So I agree with you. That one, it could be an ugly game, but it is going to be very, very important in the grand scheme of things. Michael Dominic coming in on Facebook. Good morning, fellas. As a fan, making the playoffs is heading in the right direction. I feel we have the weapons offensively as a Falcons fan, but we can improve by utilizing the tools we have correctly, which hasn't been the case. Personally, I think Heineke will bring us further into the playoffs. I don't know if Heineke's the guy either. I think over the course of the offseason, somehow, some way, the Falcons are going to be in the market for a starting quarterback. Bring him in. If it's a draft, if it's a free agent, if it's a trade, bring him in. Desmond Ridder, unless he's part of a deal, will still be there. Let the best man win. I believe Taylor Heineke was brought in to be the backup. Flat out. He said it. Everybody said it. It was said. That's a fact to Desmond Ridder. The next guy coming in will be there to compete for a starting position. And I think that happens this offseason. Desmond Ridder hasn't shown enough to prove that he automatically gets the keys to the team in 2024. Not yet. Not yet. 5 games left.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Obviously, a lot depends on how you played on stretch, but also what the quarterback carousel looks like this offseason. Also, it could be an interesting one. It's been pretty wild the last 2 off seasons. So I don't think Heineke's a guy that would take you further in the playoffs. Honestly, I think you probably look around the room and be like, I don't know if I trust any of these guys to take you far in the playoffs. But we kind of know who Heineke is as an NFL player. You are in the competing for the playoffs, but also evaluation and development mode for Desmond Ridder. So I think that is the way to go with that. If he gets hurt or confidence again, you go with Heineke. But at that point, pulling that move again this season, I mean, that would be concerning for everybody. I mean, what it might do with Ridder's confidence. He definitely would not be the guy then. And also, what does that say for Arthur Smith and decisions if you're just going back and forth, looking like the Jets, with what they're doing in the quarterback room. So you probably stick with Ridder and hope for the best here. And if, again, the defense is playing well enough, you have the offensive infrastructure, take care of the ball, good things happen.
And Ryan says, I still think Arthur Smith has a tough, hard-playing team. I agree. And that's why I would say I like the overall culture of the team, which for me is the head coach's main job. As a head coach, I like what Arthur Smith has done with the Atlanta Falcons and Terry Fontenot has done with the Atlanta Falcons. As an offensive coordinator, I do not. If Dave Ragone was calling plays and was the offensive coordinator that was hired to be the offensive coordinator and play caller for this team, we would be calling for his head.
Yeah.
Flat out.
Yep.
So when you can't separate those two from the head coach, maybe you can separate those two from the head coach. And that's kind of where I am right now. And Greg Elrod talking about, middle of the pack teams drafting, 15 to 20 or so. In this case, Atlanta Falcons. He says, I don't see a path for a top quarterback or edge in the draft. And that's okay. There's going to be some good day 2 quarterbacks. There's actually some of them could go back. I say that every time. And JJ McCarthy could be gone. Shedeur Sanders isn't coming out. And all these guys.
The NIL is going to change things. The middle, eventually it'll normalize, but we're still new enough in the NIL era that we have not gotten a lot of these quarterbacks coming out. Like a lot of these guys with the COVID year too. So it really could be a lot thinner in terms of the depth of the quarterback class, because it makes more sense for these guys to go back and get paid, 6 figures for one season as a 7 figures. Yeah. Math's hard. For one season, moving up versus, being a round 3, round 4 draft pick. I mean, guys like, Riley Leonard, he's going to get massively paid to go. Cam Ward, instead of coming out, he's going back. You have your guys like Quinn Ewers. I think I might have already said him. So it's Shedeur Sanders going to get paid too. So we have not normalized yet on what NIL means for these players coming out. And I think we have one more year of the COVID season for these guys in college too. But it'll be interesting. You haven't had many guys run out of eligibility that are forced to come out like you do this upcoming season with Sam Hartman is one in Notre Dame. He's kind of the mercenary for that 1 year thing we're talking about. Michael Penix and Bo Nix. I mean, that's a lot of guys are returning. The one guy who interests me, Scott, is sorry to interrupt, but
no.
keep an eye out for him. Again, I'm getting the draft in there either way, Scott. But I'm going to be curious to see what Spencer Rattler does down at the Senior Bowl, just because his talent is eye candy. And I think throwing against air and in that setting, people are going to be like, oh, this is why he was being mocked number 1 overall 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The quarterback, whatever documentary thing that happened, he looked like a real piece of you-know-what in that. And he's going to have questions to answer for that as well. But the arm talent,
I think that he's been humbled. The South Carolina fans speak well of him. I saw a discussion on Spencer Rattler from South Carolina fans, like, where does he rank around the best quarterbacks? And they started talking about, I was like, this is one of the best players we've ever had. I'm like, all right, okay. South Carolina's history isn't, the University of Alabama, but still, they go back 100 years. They've had some players. So it meant, well, guys will defend their own to a certain extent, but a transfer comes in and is an a-hole about it. You don't embrace him quite the same. You don't embrace him the way South Carolina fans have embraced Spencer Rattler. So hopefully he learned his lessons and has been humbled, and that talent can take over and he can become the guy. Would be rooting for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him down at Senior Bowl too. I'll be looking forward to see how he interacts with new players / teammates and how they interact with him, and talking to some of the coaches that work with him all week.
Yeah.
I might dig into that just a little bit too. Greg, certainly appreciate it. The one point I wanted to make on this, Greg, the defensive line free agent class is stout. You might have to make a trade to sign and trade type of things. Watch out for, any kind of, what am I looking for? Franchise tags or whatnot. I don't remember all the names right off the top of my head. I just remember seeing 7 or 8 names of, those are some difference makers that are scheduled to hit free agency on the defensive line this year. So that might be handled before the draft. Keep an eye on that. Montez Sweat is one of those that's already been taken off. Yeah. He was one of those that was supposed to be on there as well and has already been taken off when the Chicago Bears made a trade for him and then signed him to an extension. Moving on, Panthers, Saints. Panthers are out of it. Saints must win if they want to stay in it. If they win this game and the Buccaneers win this game, there is a 3-way tie atop the NFC South at 6-7. Texans, Jets. This one's pretty straightforward too. The Texans are in a playoff race. The Jets are not. This one is at Jets. This one, the line on this one is -3.5 for Houston. In New York, Texans win this game. They put a really good grip on one of those playoff spots, especially the way the AFC North is fighting each other tooth and nail. Rams and Ravens. This one becomes really interesting. I think the Ravens are pretty well in it. The Rams are a team that I said I had in the playoffs last week based on the rest of their schedule. And I think they can lose this game and still make the playoffs. And they probably will lose this game in Baltimore to drop to 6-7. But then they finish with Commanders, Saints, at Giants, 49ers. So they could go 3-2 in this one and finish 9-8 and still make the playoffs, Nick.
Yeah, I think this is a game that the Ravens will take care of business here. They're a more physical team. They're going to be home. It's really hard for a West Coast team to travel and play out in the east side of the country. So even in the NFL. So I'll probably end up, I think Baltimore's probably favored by 6-7 would be if I was setting the line. So I'll take the Ravens in this one, taking care of it. Like you mentioned earlier, the sacks for the Ravens. I think the Rams have done a pretty good job working together this offensive line. Our guy, Steve Avila, looks like a massive hit for them at left guard. But overall, I don't trust their overall talent on the offensive line. Right tackle, a little bit of a question mark. And Mike McDonald's doing as good of a job as anybody as scheming up free rushers and with the multitude of pieces that they have, just pushing all the right buttons. So our guy also, talking about our guy, Odafe Owe, has been a dude this year. It's clicked for him. He's been flashing like crazy for the Ravens. So took a little time, but that was never, he was really new to football. So Baltimore, I think they're going to take care of this. And Matt Stafford's going to, he's going to feel a little bit like an older man after this one. The hits are going to add up. Yeah.
You start just banking on traits. I wasn't kidding when I said the minute Odafe Owe puts on a helmet, he's going to be one of the most athletic guys in the NFL. Just give it time. How do the Ravens always get these guys? That's how, because they bank on traits when they're drafting later in the first round. And that guy was amazing. He had very similar traits to Micah Parsons but bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. Micah Parsons just much more refined as a football player.
A little looser too.
Yeah.
Definitely a little bit more linear, where the flexibility of Parsons.
And that comes with center of gravity.
Yeah.
As part of those things.
Yeah.
Vikings at Raiders. This one becomes a little bit more interesting too. The Vikings just kind of keep hanging around as we move to the 4:00 games. They're in this thing. They're absolutely in this thing. The Vikings are sitting there at 6-6. They've lost 2 in a row to the Broncos and Bears. At Raiders. Now, the Raiders are playing much, much better since they had jettisoned their awful hire of Josh McDaniels. But they've lost 2 in a row. However, at Dolphins versus Chiefs, I'm not going to be too upset that they're losing those 2 in a row. They finished with Vikings, Chargers, Chiefs, Colts, Broncos. So a tough slate. I don't think the Raiders have much of a chance to make the playoffs here. But they're at home. Vikings at home. Vikings still struggling at quarterback. Should be this is a tough one to call.
I think I'll go Raiders in this one. I think the home juice, even though it is very corporate feeling out there in the Death Star in Vegas, but I think the Vikings' steam has run out a little bit. I think that the defense for the Vikings has not been as well. Also, I think teams kind of have started to see what's working against the deviation that has been the Vikings with Brian Flores as well. So I think I'll take the Raiders in this one, even though one thing about the Raiders is they cannot run the ball worth a lick. And I think that's something that you have to at least be okay there running against those heavy boxes that the Vikings have been using. So we'll see. It's an interesting game.
I agree with you that I like the Raiders too, but that goes against everything that Vegas is saying right now. And the Vikings are favored. Gamecast on ESPN gives them a 65% chance of winning, the Vikings. I mentioned Packers and Rams as 2 teams coming from the depths to make a playoff run. The Vikings are still there. They were farther down than either of those 2 teams. I think they were 1-5 at one point, or in that neighborhood. They were maybe not quite that bad.
I don't think so, because I thought they were okay with Kirk Cousins, and then once they were kind of hovering around,
because they went on that 4-game winning streak and are still sitting at 6-6. So what was the lowest? They were sitting there at 1. They were 1-4.
1-4. Yep. And then they won a bunch of 4.
They lost to the Buccaneers, at Eagles, Chargers, beat the Panthers, and then lost to the Chiefs before they won 5 in a row. Then they've dropped 2 in a row at Broncos and against Bears when some of the shine came off of Josh Dobbs, and things revert back to the norm. What isn't normal, but would love, but if it became normal, is guys like Brian Dunn coming in here with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Y'all are killing it today. Lots of different people coming in with lots of support for the show. I love doing the NFL stuff. I get bored when I focus on one team. I like doing recruiting. I like doing NFL draft. I like talking all this stuff. Would love to turn this show into something bigger and better for everybody. Bringing in guests, all that kind of stuff. And Brian doing this kind of thing certainly helps. It's a huge help for us. So thank you so much for your support, my friend.
And we appreciate the super chats, but if you have any topics that you want us to for sure hit on, if it flashes that color on our screen, Scott and I, not good attention spans, we're going to go for the color. So if you have any questions or whatnot, hit us with the super chat, and we will definitely spend some time talking about what you've prompted us to talk about. So appreciate you guys.
Yep. Just reading some of the chats in here. So thanks to all of y'all coming in and making it a great community. It's a fun discussion in the morning. I love it. So appreciate y'all being a part of it. We move on to another big game for the Seattle Seahawks. We talk about those teams out west. We just mentioned 6-6 Rams, 6-6 Vikings, 6-6 Seahawks at 49ers. All right. If the Vikings can get that win against the Raiders and move to 7-6, they're going to have a leg up on some of these teams that are scrapping for that NFC wildcard spot, because a couple of the other teams that are playing, they've got some tough games. At 49ers, at Ravens, Vikings on the road, at Raiders. I don't see the Seahawks going into, in fact, they're 11-point underdogs. I thought the Seahawks played the Dallas Cowboys much better than I expected. So they're good. But the 49ers are really good right now. The 49ers, as of right now, week 14, are the best team in the NFL.
Probably true. Probably right. We'll see what happens with them down the stretch. I still don't fully believe in Brock Purdy, but I do believe in Kyle Shanahan. I also believe in Steve Wilkes. Maybe he should have kept that job in Carolina. Who knows what it looks like? I mean, they were playing hard for him, and he's doing a great job. I mean, they've done a really good job also integrating Chase Young into that unit. Also, Javon Hargrave has been killing it. Obviously, Fred Warner. So, I mean, everybody talks the offense for 49ers, but that defense is playing great football too. But this one, Scott, it's one of the biggest strengths on weaknesses we'll see in the entire NFL this weekend. The 49ers rushing offense versus the Seattle Seahawks rushing defense. The Seahawks have been unbelievably garbage in stopping the run this season. They're just absolutely putrid, worst in EPA per rush. I think they're worst also in success rate. And the 49ers have been first in six. I think they're first in success rate on rushing attempts and second in EPA per rush this season, only behind the Ravens. So I think this one is simple. The 49ers are going to have them in absolute hell, changing the angles and whatnot and doing eye candy stuff. And they're going to run the ball on will against this Seahawks team, in my opinion. So I think the 49ers are going to control this one easily.
We move to there's two more late games in the afternoon. Bills at Chiefs. The Broncos lost an opportunity last week to put some pressure on the Chiefs. Now the Chiefs have a 2-game lead. The Bills are playing for their lives on here, and playing for your lives in Kansas City isn't where you want to be.
No, it's not. Also, what the absolute bleep is going on with the Bills right now? Did you see what came out yesterday? The news about the Bills
about
and
the 9/11 motivational speech.
It was. I thought it was satire. This is like something that like some weird.
Wasn't that like 4 years ago?
It was, but I don't know. I never saw this, but like talking about like
no, it just came out, but it was 4 years ago. It's like, well, if he survived it then,
also,
what he won't survive is losing.
There's some weird stuff with Leslie Frazier too. I don't know if you've seen that coming out where like he took over game planning 1 week against the Chiefs. He's like, we're going to completely void the box and make them pass on us. And the Chiefs ran for like 195 yards. And then Sean McDermott took away play calling duties from Leslie Frazier completely on the surface to make it seem like it was Leslie Frazier's fault when really it was McDermott already had taken away play calling duties for that game. So there's some weirdness going on in there right now. I think this is a dead man walking. I think people smell it. I'm worried.
This is it may have already happened, but this is another nail in the coffin of the Buffalo Bills delivered by Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and eliminates the Bills really from playoff contention.
I think so. I mean, Josh Allen can go Super Saiyan mode. He's the most, when he's at his peak and protecting the ball, I don't know if anybody plays as well as him, considering everything he can do. But I think it's just too much on him. And I think this is a team that there's some malcontent in there right now. I mean, the firing to Ken Dorsey, it reeked at the time because all the numbers said that this is a great offense. So I think it's going to continue to get worse. And also we got the Cap Nicol. I can't even read the name, but please explain the Bills situation more. I'll just read it.
Let me hit on that one real quick. I want to make a point, and then I'll do that real quick. For Cap Nicunalingus. Hopefully that wasn't a dirty word I just said too fast, and you fooled me on that one. And want to say hi to our guy Michael Ronquillo coming over. Appreciate you. Good to see you. Missed you early. Glad you made it in late. Here's what's interesting about this. If you believe what Nick has been saying, and I believe in Nick, the Bills are just a 1-point dog at Kansas City. This team turmoil feels a little like easy money then. If all I have to do to make money on the Chiefs is for the Chiefs win at home, I'm betting on the Chiefs. Feel pretty good about that one because they need this one too. The Chiefs haven't been playing that great. They need this one too at 8-4. So this one's important for them. So I agree with that. Now, Cap says, please explain the Bills issue further. So it came out yesterday that as some sort of team meeting, motivational talk, head coach Sean McDermott used the 9/11 terrorists as a great example of communication to get things done. Oops.
Bizarre. And I just want to read.
What was their biggest, in order to pull off this attack, what was their biggest obstacle? Communication.
Yeah.
Dude.
It was unbelievable. I'm going to report what Adam Schefter said here exactly because it is Unbelievable. Addressing his team, he told the entire team they needed to come together, but then sources on hand said he used a strange model, the terrorists on September 11th, 2001. He cited the hijackers as a group of people who were all able to get together on the same page to orchestrate attacks to perfection. One by one, McDermott started asking specific players in the room questions. What tactics do you think they used to come together? A young player tried methodically to answer. What do you think their biggest obstacle was? A veteran on the team answered TSA, which mercifully lightened the mood. Bizarre. I can't. What the absolute. I am. It's got to be parody.
That's almost like a substance abuse thing. Like I was literally somewhere else in my mind.
Yeah.
And my mouth started going. Trust me, sometimes I feel like that when I get a little over caffeinated. My mouth just starts going and I'm like, okay, stop, dude, slow down. And it just goes.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing I do in the last like 30 years is caffeine. So
yeah, I can't believe it.
It's weird. It's absolutely weird. So
it feels like a South Park episode. Like they're the South Park cows. And it's like, okay, guys, we're going to do like, it's unbelievable.
If you wanted our pick, this might be our pick of the week is Chiefs over Bills. When it comes to a 1-point game, it's basically a pick 'em. Chiefs over Bills. That one feels pretty that would be my game. That's my game to pick. If I'm going to have to bet on one game, that might be it. Chiefs over Bills. Broncos and Chargers. This one has playoff implications for sure. Chargers win, they go to 6-7. Broncos win, they go to 7-6 and are still in it. They would still need some help. If that is how it played out, they would still be on the outside looking in behind the 7-6 Pittsburgh Steelers. If we had the Jags beating Cleveland, 6th seed being Houston, and then I had the Colts winning and moving to 8-5. So the 7-6 team that would be in it as a wild card would still be the Steelers based on their division / conference record. So that is a big game. We've covered that a lot yesterday as well on Broncos for Breakfast. So if you want to see our thoughts on Broncos Chargers in depth, go to youtube.com/milehighhuddle and look for Broncos for Breakfast. That brings us to arguably the main event. I don't even think it's arguably the main event of the weekend. Eagles at Cowboys, which should get maybe 50 million views on Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are about as hot as any team. They're at home. They played toe-to-toe with the Eagles in their last matchup. I like the Cowboys in this one at home. I'm going with the home team on this.
The Cowboys have had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL to date this season, and fortunately for everybody, the haters, the doubters, whatever, I don't know. I don't care about the Cowboys. I am a Dak fan, though, but they have the second hardest schedule down the stretch in the entire NFL, according to strength of schedule, only behind the Buffalo Bills. So I think we're going to find out a lot about Dak Prescott and this team going down. The Eagles got embarrassed last week as well against the 49ers. I think it's pretty hard to have a team as talented as the Eagles fall as hard as they did. We're going to find out a lot about them after getting embarrassed like that versus the 49ers. I'm going to take the Eagles in this one just because I'm trusting the talent and the bounce back from them. I think they need it more than the Cowboys do. I think they're going to be a little bit more desperate. So I'll go with them, but I cannot wait for this game. This is going to be a great one. Bills Chiefs are up there for me as well, Scott, just because every time Patrick Mahomes goes against Josh Allen, it is must-see TV. I'll never forget that AFC divisional round game. I mean, that was one of the better football games I've witnessed. But I think I'll take the Eagles in this one. I'm pulling for God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm pulling for the Cowboys just because I am a Dak fan, and I'm really hoping that me starting to say like Dak Prescott MVP 6-7 weeks ago.
It could be a battle for MVP. Jalen Hurts is in that conversation too.
It could be. Watching them, Dak has a lot more responsibility on the functionality of that offense being good. But Hurts is great. Don't get it twisted. So I'll go Eagles in this one, but I'm pulling for Dak just because I think it's time that he gets an MVP. He's playing amazing football, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
I have said earlier this year that I think Philadelphia is the most balanced, best overall team. I think San Francisco is probably a little better right now.
Yeah.
I just like the home game factor in this one. And what's interesting is this one has significant impact on seeding in the NFC. You want to. Actually, I don't know if that's true, to be honest with you. Based on the games that we have picked, and I had Minnesota. Did I have the Vikings winning that game? I had the Vikings winning in the Raiders. I actually did pick the Vikings when I was going through this earlier. Minnesota had the 6th seed at 7-6. I have the Cowboys beating the Eagles, and that puts the Cowboys in the 3rd seed, facing the Vikings at home, which would put the Eagles in Atlanta as the 5th seed. If the Eagles were to win this game, that puts the Eagles as the number 1 seed and drops the Cowboys down to facing the Falcons in the wild card in Atlanta. So this is a big game. They go from the Eagles on this one go from number 1 overall seed and a bye and home field throughout to no bye and playing on the road in their first game. This is a big game. I'm never really that excited about battling for seeds, but when it starts getting into making predictions, this is a hell of a weekend, y'all. It really is.
Yeah, it really should be a good one. I cannot wait to see what happens in like Bills Chiefs game, of course, the Packers, or not the Packers, the Eagles Cowboys. It's too bad Monday night doesn't have one juicy matchup, right? Like I'll be watching. Don't get me wrong, I'll be watching. But I think both teams Monday night, Dolphins are going to take care of business. They've been the number 1 defense in the NFL since week 8 by like a good chunk. So watch out. I've been thinking about this guy. I think we kind of talked about this after the show Wednesday. Or maybe it was a different show I guessed it on, but right now, like almost every single half of the teams in like the top 15 in offensive EPA are some descendant of the Kyle Shanahan team. It's killing whatever teams are doing defensively right now with the light boxes and with the blocking angles that they can get on those light boxes. And who's the one guy that I would trust to figure out a way to slow down these Kyle Shanahan offenses? Well, it's the guy who's seen it every day, who's figured out solutions for almost everything. Vic Fangio and the Dolphins, their defense has been unbelievable because the Dolphins started out so hot offensively. Everybody and Mike McDaniel is such a fun story, and Tyreek Hill's playing arguably MVP level as well. Everybody talks Dolphins offense. This is the best defense in football for the last 2 months. I think we need to talk a little bit more about Bradley Chubb's playing great. You talk about a defensive lineman who's going to be available. Christian Wilkins has been awesome for them as well. You got Van Ginkel has been unleashed as a really good pass rush weapon for them. Jalen Ramsey's back playing good football. Javon Holland is probably an all-pro safety. This is a defense that I think we're just not talking enough about right now. They're playing really good football.
This one should be pretty easy for the player I would go after. Keith Brugman asks, for your point, Miami Dolphins, the Dallas Cowboys you were talking about there down the stretch. They're Eagles at Bills at Dolphins, Lions, and they finished with the Commanders. The Dolphins haven't had the toughest schedule in the world. In fact, their strength of victory is, I think, the lowest in the NFL.
I believe it.
They finished their last 3 games with Cowboys at Ravens, Bills. So we'll get a better idea for them.
Yeah.
But I agree. But the Packers have to win this game to stay alive too. So that's the other part of this. Going back to just a call back from what we talked about before we put a bow on this. Keith Brugman asked, good to see you, Keith. He says, Scott, you can trade for Steele a non-quarterback from any NFC South team. Okay. Any team I could steal one player from is Myles Garrett, Cleveland Browns.
I think he said in the NFC South. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a qualifier, so now I have to think about it again. Any NFC South team sending them your best player at the same position, who do you trade for and who do you send?
So you're sending your best player at the same time? It's a
little confusing, Keith.
So you got to think about where you're the weakest, and a team might be strongest as well. So I think the way to think about this would be
the Falcons need a pass rush. Who's the best pass rusher in the NFC?
Brian Burns. Bud Dupree for Brian Burns. There it is. Yep.
And I'm sending him Bud Dupree.
That's the easiest.
Arnold Ebiketie, if you're the Falcons.
Boom, boom. We're done.
Yeah, and that's probably the answer across the board for the Buccaneers, for the Saints. Because the Saints need a pass rush big time.
Yeah.
So that's probably the answer for every NFC South team that isn't the Panthers is Brian Burns, who is, I mentioned at the top of the show, a pending free agent. He's one of those names that is really, there's a lot of defensive line edge help in this free agent class if they reach free agency. Brian Burns is one of those guys. Yeah. He's going to get a bag. He's going to get a big fat bag.
Yes, he is.
The Falcons will make him a priority to come 3 hours south down I-85 from Charlotte to Atlanta. Flowery Branch. Not even, barely 3 hours to Flowery Branch.
Yeah. And I did want to see in here one of favorites. I see Michael Latsky is in the house. Haven't seen him in a while. Yeah. I did want to share this too. I think I shared it with you at the moment, but Michael sent me a really, really nice package of information, data, or not data, just like clothes, food, candy, whatever. And he sent me an Iowa shirt that he must have worn.
We don't need to see this. What am I clicking on?
Isn't this great? I want to give a shout out to Michael Latsky for he's a signed letter from Hayden Fry and this shirt that I am definitely going to wear whenever my newborn comes. And when he's old enough to start feeling embarrassment.
I think it was for your newborn, Nick.
I don't know if Michael's a little shorter than I am too. I am a long torsoed individual. My wife actually has longer legs than I do, even though I'm 4 inches taller. But yeah, shout out to the Iowa cutoff. It brought a lot of joy to my friends and family when I sent them that picture.
So yeah, you're a more secure man than I am to send that picture out. Listen, we are out of here. It is Friday. It is going to be it's already been an interesting week of NFL football, starting with the Patriots Steelers last night. And it's going to be a fun, long weekend of football in the NFL. That's why we went over all of these games. I want to say thank you to Ryan Adonis, who kicked us off on YouTube with the super chat. Edward Brown as well. John Harrell coming in big with a super sticker. Greg Elrod, big part of the chat. First one in here, super chat as well. And Brian Dunn. Y'all make the show that much better for us. So hopefully we can make it that much better for you. So thank you for your support. We will be back on Monday to talk Falcons Broncos. We'll be on this channel, 9 a.m. to talk Falcons versus Buccaneers and see who is taking charge, or at least taking the lead in the NFC South. Among other things, could be talking who are going to be the best head coaching candidates like we did after the Cardinals game. Then we will flap over to youtube.com/milehighhuddle to touch on the Broncos. We are here every Friday to talk NFL, and we will probably hit more on NFL draft next week because I don't think the slate of games is quite as interesting next week as it was this week. Thank you for being here. Nick, any final thoughts before we get going?
Yeah, Saturday, Army-Navy game. Should be a lot of fun. Obviously, they got a stranglehold on the market on Saturday, with that being the only college football game outside of the, I think, FCS playoffs kicking off here. But the Army's favored by 3. They're both 5-6 this year. Midshipmen owned for a long time, but going to be played in Foxborough as well. So should be a fun game. I always like to tune into that one. Just, good football, the storylines and whatnot. So Army-Navy should be a good time. We'll see what happens.
I'm guessing that Michael is talking about Ohtani. Should be pretty close to making a decision for MLB news. Is it Pac Die? Apology. Says, actually, the Falcons do have a 3-0 lead in our division. Yes, but the Buccaneers are 3-1. So if they win the game, that tiebreaker evens itself out. You would both be 3-1. You would both be 1-1 against each other. The division record, this would be the same. The head-to-head would be the same. The tiebreaker for the Falcons Buccaneers would go to the Buccaneers. So NFC South, 1 o'clock, battle for first place. Winner is in first because the Saints, I don't think, have a good enough division or conference record to win those tiebreakers. On that note, we are out of here. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks to all of our Super Chat superstars coming in big for us. We will be back on Monday. I hope you'll have a hell of a football weekend. Until then, we will see you next time.
Peace.